Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? It's Proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to a premium episode of The Spread. I'm your host, Jim Sella, actually in studio with Jay Dash, back in PA. Ball.
Feeling it.
Needed it. Needed to get that Western PA back in my life. Cold weather, leaves everywhere, mud.
Computer
it
blows
like
up.
Worms. My computer blows up. At least I got to eat turkey.
Believe it.
What do we got? The fantasy episode this week, week 12, closing in on the fantasy playoffs. Both my teams are 6-5 in my pay league and in my fun league. I got to get some wins and stick around in those playoffs. I was in the championship last year.
Yeah, Easy beat you?
No, John beat me. Johnny Parlay.
That was the other league.
Yeah, believe it.
All right, well, do you want to get started with the situational starters here? We are averaging 15.86 points per player. That's non-quarterbacks so far this season.
Ball.
Who you going with?
I'm going to take Rashard Jennings going up against Cleveland. Basically, anytime you give me a choice between guys going up against Cleveland, I'm going to pick them. They give up the fourth most points to fantasy running backs. We've seen Le'Veon Bell run all over them as Steeler fans a week ago, or actually just a few days ago now. Their defense is just terrible. Their offense is terrible, so it doesn't give their defense any time off of the field. Rashard Jennings had a season-high 21 carries last week at Chicago. Probably going to keep getting more and more as it gets colder. The winds down there in New Jersey get a little crazy. So the Giants are going to start focusing on running the ball a little better. Teams that run the ball are successful in the playoffs. The Giants want to get there. And Cleveland's garbage.
Yeah, season high, like you said, 21 carries last week. He also did it in the passing game as well. And now he has 80 or more yards rushing in each of his past two games. That's his two highest totals of the season. Now he has one of his best matchups of the year, so definitely.
Ramping it up for playoff time.
All right, let me give you two receivers here. The first one, Rashard Matthews from the Tennessee Titans. He has been very good recently. 6 TDs in his last 7 games, double-digit fantasy points in 7 of his last 8 games. Now he's going into Chicago, the worst team at stopping the pass. One of the worst teams, I should say. And if you look, Rashard Matthews has become Marcus Mariota's favorite target. 23 targets over the last 2 games. So this guy has been doing it big, and I mean, he has a good chance to score this week as well, going up against Chicago, obviously.
He's finally doing what they wanted him to do, bringing him into Tennessee. It's nice to see Mariota getting a rapport with somebody. Chicago's terrible. They got no quarterback, so their offense isn't going to be any good. They're just going to get beat up the rest of the year.
That's the one scary thing is hopefully Chicago's offense isn't so bad that Tennessee stops passing in the second quarter or at halftime. All right, the other guy, Miami Dolphins wide receiver, Devontae Parker, going up against San Francisco. They let up the third most fantasy points to wide receivers.
I hear Parker was kidnapped and Ace Ventura had to rescue him before the game.
Believe it. He had to call up Dan Marino and see what was going on. But look, Devontae Parker over his last 2 games, 5 receptions, 103 yards 2 weeks ago at San Diego. And last week, 8 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown at the Los Angeles Rams. Now he's coming home. One of his best matchups of the season, obviously. San Francisco is one of the worst defenses in football, just like the Chicago Bears. And Devontae Parker has actually been the best receiver over the past 2 games as well. Ryan Tannehill's looking his way more than Jarvis Landry right now, although I think that has something to do with Landry's a little beat up right now. And with Devontae Parker making plays, I expect him to have a big game this week as well.
He's a young guy. That's why Miami brought him in. There's a lot of talk that Tannehill could be on the outs going into the offseason, so he wants to shine. So he's going to be getting to the ball to his playmakers.
All right, let's move on to sleepers here. We are averaging 13.14 points per non-quarterback for our sleepers, so not terrible there as well. Who are you going with?
I'm going to take Tyler Boyd going up against Baltimore. They gave up the 12th most points to fantasy wide receivers. Baltimore strong against the run, but bad against the pass. You've seen Boyd's fantasy numbers blow up last week with the injury to A.J. Green. They could double him, so that's a possibility if there's no other receiving threats out there. But I really see it as Eifert's back, so he'll get some catches, but Boyd will be the main receiving target as far as the wide receivers go. I look to see this kid put up a lot of points. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of talent. We've seen him here in Pitt a lot, in his college career. So I think this guy can ball, and if Andy Dalton's smart, he'll feed him the ball.
Yeah, like you said, AJ Green's out, and also Giovanni Bernard is out as well. So that's a guy that's used in the passing game. So whatever targets are going to Green, whatever targets go to Bernard, they're going to be going to Tyler Eifert, Tyler Boyd, and Brandon LaFell now. And you'll be talking about LaFell in a little while. I expect Tyler Boyd to be the number one target out there, outside of Tyler Eifert, obviously, the tight end.
Who I have in both my fantasy leagues.
And that's going to be moving forward as well. So you definitely want to pick Tyler Boyd up if he's out there and keep him around for maybe until the end of the season. He might be good until the season is over now.
If you have a dynasty league, you could pick him up now for low cost.
Believe it. All right, two other guys here. Michael Floyd, the Arizona Cardinals wide receiver, going into Atlanta. They led up the fourth most points to fantasy wide receivers this season. Michael Floyd hasn't been real good this season. He's been very inconsistent. Really, the Cardinals as a whole hasn't been as good as people hoped they would be. I mean, you mentioned that at the beginning of the season that Palmer wasn't going to repeat what he did. But Michael Floyd, he's starting to come around a little bit. Double-digit fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. John Brown hasn't been doing much. J.J. Nelson only has a few targets over the past few games. So with this matchup going up against Atlanta, a team that can really put up points, that may force Carson Palmer's hand in the throne a little bit more, although David Johnson can still get it done when they're behind. They can stick with the run a little bit more than most teams can. But with the fact that they're going up against one of the worst pass defenses and playing a team that's high scoring, I think Michael Floyd can come up and have a solid game this week. And the other guy, a guy you had, was it you or Easy picked last week? Corey Coleman.
Me.
For the Cleveland Browns going up against the New York Giants. Now, he didn't do great last week, but he did have a career-high 12 targets against Pittsburgh. But it wasn't that huge of a game because really, what's his name? Cody Kessler.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing very well against Pittsburgh. Then he got injured. Josh McCown comes in, and actually Corey Coleman had a few drops early in the game, but when McCown came in, he started to pick it up a little bit in the game. So now that they have a week to work together, Josh McCown's starting. So going into this week up against the New York Giants, who is middle of the pack against stopping fantasy wide receivers, I think Corey Coleman's going to stay very involved and have a little bit better of a game. I like McCown a little bit more than Kessler in terms of the passing game.
RG3's back at practice.
Is he?
Yeah, not expected to play or anything.
Yeah, definitely
he's
not.
Practicing. He might play before the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Josh
probably
McCown
not
can
the
get
end
a win.
of the fantasy year though, and you're not really going to take RG3 in a fantasy playoff game, but he could help those wide receivers do something in the playoffs.
All right, let's move on to deep sleepers here. We are averaging 12.17 points per deep sleeper.
Deep it up.
Non-quarterbacks. Who are you going with?
I'm taking Brandon. I've fallen and I can't get up. Going up against Baltimore. Baltimore, again, great run defense, pretty porous pass defense. Jimmy Smith is expected to not play in that game, so that bodes well for this Cincinnati passing game. It's a division game, so these teams know each other. But again, no A.J. Green, so that opens up a lot for other Cincinnati wide receivers. I think LaFell can do something. He's not going to be great. I don't expect him to ball for 150 yards and 10 catches. But you might see this guy get 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. That's still a pretty good game.
Yeah, his last division game, actually, 4 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Baltimore, they're one of the best in the league at stopping the run still, so Cincinnati's going to have to pass in this game.
In a PPR league, just to remind you. In a non-PPR.
Oh, please believe it. We do all PPR here. Standard leagues are stupid.
Boring. Wait, real quick. What is the scoring in our league? Is it 6 points for a touchdown or 7?
For a quarterback.
A quarterback gets 6 and anybody else gets 7.
No, they're all 6.
Okay.
Usually, quarterbacks get 4 in other leagues.
Yes, I've seen this debate on social media today. Somebody asked a question. They were mad because quarterbacks were getting 6 and other players were getting 7, but Dak ran one in and didn't
I've never
get 7.
seen anyone get 7 before in any league I've been in.
It's weird.
All right, another receiver. We talked about Rashard Matthews for the Tennessee Titans. I think Tajay Sharp for Tennessee can have a good game as well going into Chicago. Like I said, one of the worst teams at stopping the pass. This guy has been inconsistent. He's a young guy, obviously, and really he fell off for a good while. But now, over the past couple games, he's started to step back up into a solid role for Tennessee. He has back-to-back games with double-digit fantasy points. He scored his first two TDs of the season over the last 2 weeks as well. So Rashard Matthews and Tajay Sharp are two players I can see getting big points in this game. Because really, Mariota's been a beast this season.
On the road, Tennessee's a lot better, and Chicago's garbage.
Tajay Sharp has his best games against the NFC as well when I went back and looked. So this is another NFC game for him.
Guy's going to ball.
And the last guy.
Will Tye, the Signs guy.
Believe it, tight end for the New York Giants. Now, the only reason I'm saying him is because he is playing Cleveland. They let up the most points to fantasy tight ends. And he had his best game 2 weeks ago versus Cincinnati, seeing a season high with 8 targets, and then scored last week versus Chicago, although it wasn't that huge of a game. But now getting his best matchup of the season, I can see Will Tye at least getting you double-digit fantasy points. This guy is widely available. So I expect Odell Beckham to have a big game. Like you mentioned in the situational starter piece of this segment, Rashard Jennings should have a big game. Sterling Shepard has actually stepped up over the last few weeks and scored touchdowns, I think, 3 weeks in a row now. So I expect him to have a solid game as well. And I expect Will Tye, the way he's been playing over the past couple weeks, to be able to step in and have a solid game here.
Anybody in that Giants passing attack has the opportunity for a big game because we know they like to sling it around. And Eli is durable. That guy hasn't missed a game in his career, I don't think, honestly. And
I think it's going to help that McCown's in this game, man. Just the fact that they could score a few more points and force the Giants to maybe have to pass just a little bit longer in this game.
Interesting note about that game. Ryan Nassib, I think is how you pronounce his last name, the backup quarterback for the Giants. His brother plays D-line or something.
Where's he from, Syracuse or something?
His brother plays D-line for the Browns, and the Browns defensive coordinator wants both of them to get in the game so that his brother can sack him because he doesn't think that's ever happened in the NFL. Brother sacking brother.
Yeah, probably not.
Any other fantasy advice?
Not unless you have any questions.
I don't know. My fantasy team's pretty beast, even though I'm only 6-5.
Well, that's the way fantasy goes, man. You never know what your record's going to be.
Should I play James Starks or Thomas Rawls?
Oh, I'm playing Thomas Rawls for sure. I don't trust James Starks to do what he did last week.
Le'Veon got me 27, Moncrief got me 16, and Prater got me 12.
Balling already.
Yeah, the guy I'm going against has Reed, though, and he put up 31. But I got Eifert. Gronk might not play, so I can't play him.
Okay.
But I got Fitz, Cooper, or Pryor. I got to play 2 of them.
Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you sit him? And you got to play Fitz and Cooper, right? You can't be sitting those guys.
Well, then at flex, I already played Moncrief. This is the league I have a kicker in. It's garbage.
Your team sounds beast.
Every team I have is beast. That's why I don't know why I should win the championship every year.
I don't think it works like that.
Then I got a bunch of dudes that are hurt on my bench. Procise, Rogers, Hunter Henry. It's garbage.
Yeah, you want to keep them on your bench.
I do have Booker on my bench, though, and McCoy and Gurley starting. Do I sit Gurley going up against New Orleans?
No.
Forte against New England?
That's a little bit tougher, but now I'm playing Forte.
So Booker's on the bench.
Yeah.
Eifert's on the bench.
Well, Booker going up against KC. KC isn't that good at stopping the pass, so...
Eifert over Forte?
Yeah, I'm playing Eifert over Forte. Like you said, A.J. Green's out in this game. Giovanni Bernard not playing. So it's Eifert, LaFell, and Tyler Boyd as the receivers out there. Eifert's definitely the main option for Andy Dalton right now. So I'd definitely play him over Forte.
There it is. 2 more wins for me in fantasy football. Cruising to the playoffs.
All right, wrap it up.
Fans, questions, comments, hit us up on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Hit me up on Twitter at betjimthewin. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. As always, come here to YouTube, click subscribe, share it with your friends. Send us in some artwork. We'll use it on the show and give you credit. Maybe.